to the events of this day. So what we know not, teach us. What we have not, give us. What we are not, make us. Through Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. Say the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
And so that we can observe a minute's silence in recognition of the outstanding work and the life of the late Sir Henry Ford, Member of Parliament for Christchurch West. May his soul and that of the departed rest in peace. Good morning, honorable members and our guests. This chamber is now in session. The minutes of Tuesday, October the 8th, be deferred. Honorable member?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I beg to move that the aforesaid minutes be deferred.
The question is that these minutes of October 8th be deferred. Honourable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Announcements by Your Honor, the Deputy Speaker. Messages from Her Excellency, the President. Petitions, papers.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm commanded to lay the report on the St. George North by-election 2020.
Government notices, private members' notices, notices of questions, reports from select committees, first readings of bills.
I am begged to move the first reading of the Business Barbados Bill 2024.
The question is that this bill be read the first time. Honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Statements by ministers, congratulatory and/or obituary speeches, personal explanations, motions for leave of absence, oral replies to questions, notices of motion for the adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance, orders of the day.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of standing orders 6, 16, 18, 20, 42 subsection 5, 43, and 44 for the remainder of the day's sitting.
I beg second that.
Question is that the standing orders so mentioned be suspended for today. Honourable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Government business. No?
Government business is the order of the day.
Order number 11. In the name of the Honourable Minister of Tourism and International Transport, to move the second reading of the Merchant Shipping Bill 2024.
Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. With your permission, Madam Deputy Speaker, I would like to request the orders 11 through 15 on the order paper, because they're so closely linked, be considered and treated as a cognate debate.
The question is that orders number 11 to 15 on the order paper be accepted as a cognate debate. Honourable members in favor, please say aye. And those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. Honourable member.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I rise this morning to continue the outstanding work done by the former minister responsible for the blue economy, who would have commenced the pathway for Barbados to be at this stage where we're hurling into this through this Parliament, a number of new pieces of legislation intending to modernize the maritime sector. And I also want to thank all those who would have worked within that ministry, the blue economy, for their outstanding contributions in allowing us to reach this point here this morning. Madam Deputy Speaker, we are here this morning to discuss and debate the merchant shipping suite of laws, comprising 5 bills that you so graciously allow us, Madam Deputy Speaker, to co-join in this debate as a cognate debate. Each bill relates to merchant shipping activities, and the suite of laws addresses the major legislative-related deficiencies identified in the 2018 audit of Barbados by the International Maritime Organization. I would have made this point before when we piloted other bills in this honorable chamber. And as we continue to debate lay bills, but also debate them in here, it is important to understand where we've come from in order to appreciate the volume of work necessary as we advance the maritime sector. The imminent follow-up of the audit, obviously which is intended to occur later this year, gives us an opportunity for the IMO now to look back post-2018 to see what a remarkable path and a remarkable progress that this Barbados Labour Party administration has taken in order to modernize its maritime laws. Today, in the suite of the merchant suite of the laws, we are going to be looking at the merchant shipping bill, which is approximately, I believe, contains 1,041, I believe, pages. The merchant shipping liability and compensation bill, the merchant shipping maritime marriage bill, the merchant shipping liner conferences bill, and the merchant shipping multimodal transport bill. All these bills, Madam Deputy Speaker, refer to the various activities undertaken by merchant ships, be it the transportation of goods, of people, or the facilitation of other offshore development activities. Those activities undertaken by special purpose merchant ships to support other maritime sectors. The legal landscape for the merchant shipping sector is complex. It is indeed intricate and dynamic, and the system of regulations deriving from the customary maritime laws, the general principles that are codified into the laws of the sea as detailed in the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, 1992, and codified in international shipping laws. As we all know, shipping is the cornerstone of global trade. It is, I am advised, responsible for more than 90% of the world's trade in goods, and also the national socio-economic development of a country. Shipping is a key revenue earner, not only for Barbados, but also people who work within the sector. And then within that sector, as diverse as it is, there are a number of opportunities which I shall disclose during this debate that will further enhance Barbados's earning reputation as a place not only to do business, but as a place to generate even more revenue. And I say that, Madam Deputy Speaker, because when in 2018, the maritime audit was conducted, it had to assess the extent to which Barbados complied with its obligations under the various IMO instruments concerning safety, security, and the protection of the marine environment. But what it also did was that it also would have caused us to implement various IMO instruments in relation to the flag state and vessels who carry port state control and others with coastal state control. But what must be told is that prior to 2018, we were not compliant with a number of IMO regulations. Our legislation was outdated. And what we have done since 2018 was to ensure that not only we had the audit, but that we complied with the recommendations as part of the assessment detailed by the IMO in its audit. And we are here today because of the overarching legislative specific findings pertaining to the maritime safety and security and marine pollution. And we have to do this because if we want to be serious about the maritime sector, we can't do as was done by the previous administration and allow the modernization of IMO and certainly the maritime sector to go with a failing grade. What we have done is that we are correcting all the deficiencies that are necessary for us to advance the maritime sector. And you will recall that the various pieces of maritime legislation developed then under the Ministry of Maritime Affairs and the Blue Economy was indeed a response to correct the numerous legislative deficiencies, as I said, and also the recognition of the duty of the government of Barbados as a signatory to the IMO to ensure that we comply with all of the IMO instruments, but at the same time advance our laws to regulate the maritime sector. Of course, in order to do so, there had to be a policy. And there was a national policy on international shipping, which is both compliant and developmental in its trajectory. Of course, at the time when we did so, we recognized coming out of that there were a number of pieces of legislation that we had to bring to this Honourable Chamber. Madam Deputy Speaker, you will recall that I came to this Honourable Chamber, and I believe it was in February, and we debated the FAL, the Facilitation of International Maritime Traffic Act. That was enacted through the official gazette on February 12th of this year. And that piece of legislation implicitly set out to ensure that we complied with the Convention on the facilitation of international maritime traffic. The yacht was also designed to support the development of a port community system in Barbados to further enhance the efficiency of the ship-port interface. We didn't stop there, Madam Deputy Speaker. We also brought to this honorable chamber the Shipping Domestic Vessels Act. It was enacted by publication in the Official Gazette on the 26th of July of this year to ensure compliance by small vessels with the minimum safety, security, and marine environmental protection standards of the IMO, while promoting development of the small vessel sector and the water sports industry. We went further and we brought to this chamber the Marine Transport Emissions Control Suite. And we did that in July. I believe it was July 9th of this year. And that piece of legislation sought to ensure compliance by large merchant vessels through domesticating Annex 6 of the International Convention for the Prevention of the Pollution from Ships, what they call the MARPOL. This legislation, of course, was to ensure that the enabling framework for the Barbados' development of the green sector was secured. We also decided that we had to take an additional step. And we are here this morning because with the Merchant Shipping Suite of laws comprising 5 bills, 22 regulations, to seek to ensure compliance by large merchant vessels with stringent maritime safety, security, and marine pollution prevention requirements imposed on vessels exceeded 150 gross tons. The entire suite of the merchant legislation covers both the wet and dry aspects of shipping. Of course, wet shipping refers to activities occurring during the voyage, while dry shipping refers to those matters that are maritime in nature, of course, but occurring on land. And the 5 bills constituting the suite, as I've explained, the Merchant Shipping Bill, the Merchant Shipping Liability and Compensation Bill, the Merchant Shipping Marine Marriage Bill, the Merchant Shipping Liner Conferences, and the Merchant Shipping Multimodal Transport Bill. These 5 bills, Madam Deputy Speaker, though largely developed under the then Maritime Affairs Ministry, were advanced and submitted to the Cabinet by the Ministry of Environment and National Beautification, the Green and Blue Economy. It was when the Shipping Division, now the Barbados Maritime Transport Administration, was part of the bill, and therefore it was eventually transferred to the Ministry of Tourism and International Transport. The Merchant Shipping Bill is supported by 20 regulations which serve to operationalize the maritime safety and security aspects of the bill in respect of the aspects relating to flag, port, and state controls. The Merchant Shipping Liability and Compensation Bill is supported by 2 regulations which serve to operationalize the liability and the compensation regime in respect of ships under the said Merchant Shipping Liability and Compensation Bill. But the key features, Madam Deputy Speaker, of the Merchant Shipping Bill, it must be noted that it composed of some 34 parts, 1,488 provisions, and 14 schedules. It is a key piece of legislation in this merchant shipping legislation series. It contains a majority of the corrections of the legislative-related deficiencies identified in the 2018 audit by the IMO. And I'll briefly go through, not briefly, I should say, I'll go through the bill. The bill, as I indicated, is voluminous in nature. over 1,000 pages. But it is important that we seek to understand what we are doing and why the government is committed to bringing this piece of legislation to this Parliament. In Part 1 of the bill, clauses 1 to 22, it deals with the preliminary matters, including vessels to which the legislation applies, namely vessels above 150 gross tons, and that's important because we also have the small vessels, the small vessels bill, it also defines the terms used in the bill in the preliminary section. And as with previous maritime legislation brought before this Honourable House, there is an ambulatory reference clause in relation to the international maritime instruments incorporated within the legislation. As you well know, the IMO, as part of its mandate, will routinely update and modernize regulations and other conventions. And therefore, it is necessary for us to ensure that we have the ambulatory reference so that we could codify those changes when they happen into the laws of Barbados. And the bill certainly is very proactive in that respect so that we don't have to come to this chamber every day of the week to effect critical changes. The objectives of the bill as incorporated at Clause 2, and I shall read them because they are very important. To create an enabling environment for development of an economically viable, ecologically sustainable, and innovative merchant shipping sector for Barbados. We certainly want to bolster the marine commerce and seaborne trading activities. We want to enhance efficiency, safety and security, and environmental performance in shipping. And we need to give effect to a number of international maritime conventions, including the International Convention on Maritime Liens and Mortgages 1993, the International Convention on Tonnage Measurement of Ships 1969, the International Convention on Load Lines 1969, of 1998 relating to that convention, the Convention on International Regulations Preventing Collision at Sea 1972, the International Convention for the Safety of Life 1974, and the 1988 protocol relating to that convention, the International Maritime Convention on Maritime Search and Rescue 1979, the Convention on the International Maritime Satellite Organization 1976, the International Convention for Safe Containers 1972, the International Convention for the Prevention of Marine Pollution from Ships 1973, as modified by the Protocol of 1978 and by the Protocol of 1997. The Convention on Prevention of Marine Pollution by Dumping of Waste and Other Matter, the International Convention on the Control of Harmful Anti-Fouling Systems on Ships, the International Convention for the Control of Management of the Ships' sediments and ballast water and everything else that is needed in that regime, the International Convention relating to intervention at high seas in the case of oil pollution, and we talk about a bit later, the International Convention of Oil Pollution, Preparedness and Response and Cooperation, and Hazardous Instruments, the Nairobi Convention. Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm not going to list all of them, but I felt it was necessary to list some of those conventions so that we understand the magnitude of why the bill has over 1,000 pages, because we were so deficient in the past, not this administration, of course, that we found it necessary to ensure that we incorporated all of the conventions relating to the IMO. Part 3, clauses 41 to 72 of the bill outlines the maritime and merchant finance framework. It is critical to have such provisions in the bill considering the capital intensiveness of the shipping sector. The bill provides an enabling framework for the creation of public and private maritime and merchant banks, and major shipping nations like Greece, Malta, and the United Kingdom, for example, They've recognized the importance of ship finance and have gone to the extent of providing specialized maritime financial institutions that understand the nature of shipping and thus tailor their financial services to meet the financial needs of the shipping industry. And it's for this reason that the ministry and all the officers recognize that this was an important consideration. This is an opportunity for the shipping industry, not only because of its very nature, but because it creates a number of opportunities for the government of Barbados to get involved in the financial aspects of shipping by way of considering and encouraging persons with capital who are in this business to consider Barbados as a sovereign location where they can effectively have a financing and capital requirements located here in Barbados to further build out our financial services sector. And it is important, it is essential, because corporate financial management within shipping companies would give the opportunity to Barbados if they believe that we have the requisite legislation at hand. So this piece of legislation effectively creates inroads into the very lucrative and ever-evolving ship finance area. Existing financial institutions, of course, can benefit from adding maritime financial services to their portfolio. And of course, we will do whatever we have to do to encourage them, obviously, to come to Barbados and, if necessary, set up in Barbados to execute ship finance, because the modernization of the legislation would now allow these financial entities and others dealing with the capital markets to consider Barbados as a location for them to engage in business. Clauses 73 to 81 of the bill outlines a framework to support marine commerce and trade within the purview of the National Maritime Transport Policy, as I referred to it earlier. The IMO classifies a national transport policy as a statement of principles and objectives to guide decisions in the maritime sector, and the existing national policy on international shipping, upon which all of the shipping legislation for Barbados is premised, is an alignment, is certainly a national maritime transport policy priority, and the existing policy envisaged in the alignment with international maritime standards and maritime legal landscape, which is currently being built out. The promotion of public and private partnerships in shipping, those are located at clauses 82 to 85 of the bill, which formally recognizes the role of Barbados's private sector shipping organizations to the continued advancement of Barbados's merchant shipping sector. The Barbados Maritime Transport Administration, formerly Shipping Division, within the Ministry of Tourism and International Transport, certainly will advance a number of these initiatives and continue to work with the private sector shipping organizations and other commercial entities to ensure we make considerable progress and to ensure that the contributions to the shipping industry, by virtue of their existence and their continue to trade with the necessary activities as they pursue them within their business. So we are building out that aspect within the shipping, the private-public sector partnership. Now, the ship suppliers and maritime service providers, if we look at clauses 86 through 91 of the bill, it recognizes the importance of ship suppliers and maritime service providers, hence the standards adopted by the International Ship Suppliers Association, incorporated under Part 6 of the bill. At Clause 91, the bill empowers the shipping minister to jointly with the minister responsible for commerce to develop a small business ship supplier scheme to enable the equitable participation of small businesses in the ship supply and maritime service provision. And of course, we will work jointly to ensure that we build out that particular sector. In respect of ship registration, that's clauses, part 7, clauses 92 to 171 of the bill. It details the registration regime for merchant vessels. In the human rights arena, I am advised that they say rights come with responsibilities. In a similar vein, in maritime, it is said that with vessel registration comes the responsibility of the country of the registry to ensure that the vessels registered under its flag comply with maritime safety, security, and marine pollution protections. In order to engage in shipping activities of any kind, ships must be registered in a country. We all know that too well when we look at the Article 91 on the United Nations Convention of Law of the Seas, 1982. It requires ships to have a nationality. And ship registration is also important in the realm of maritime regulations, compliance, and enforcement. From the moment a ship registers, it has obviously to be subjected to a number of maritime laws and those of the state to which it has its flag. The concept of a flag state control, the quality of the maritime legislation in terms of the alignment with international maritime standards and best practices, also in terms of legislation support for the maritime sector, and obviously other activities contributing to the attractiveness of the ship registry. Now, this particular bill, once again, would allow this country to become even more attractive to persons who wish to use Barbados' good name as part of its flag state or as part of its responsibility as a country of registry. And therefore, this legislation will allow us to attract even more ship registry business in Barbados, and thereby increasing, obviously, the revenue generating opportunities from the registration of ships. It is clear to us that once we have, especially open registry states which are under immense scrutiny by IMO, and Barbados is an open registry state, as with the majority of shipping nations within and outside the Caribbean. And an open registry refers to countries having a ship registry system that allows vessel owners to register their vessels in those countries despite not having a genuine link between the country of registry and the vessel. So in other words, there are people who go and they purchase ships using cargo ships as an example. They will determine where they would want the ship to be registered. They will look to see that we are compliant with IMO regulations because they are duty bound to ensure that, especially if the ship was built and financed, that they comply with a lot of the, if not all the IMO considerations and all the regulations as well. They look to see. And by this major step today, once this bill passes this House and in the other place, it would allow Barbados to attract even more revenue from the ship registry. And this is very critical. Not only are we looking for investment, but we want to ensure that at all times, Barbados is compliant with all of the internationally accepted maritime regulations. Now, the merchant shipping suite of laws and the other new pieces of maritime legislation applicable to merchant ships above 150 gross tons will further enhance Barbados' already good reputation on the international shipping scene as a result of the significant changes that we are making in respect of this legislative framework that we are pursuing. Of course, the merchant shipping bill will demonstrate and certainly will be operating as a flag of confidence and not as a flag of convenience. And that is critical to our name and certainly our success in shipping. Of course, as I said earlier, the provision of such services in terms of ship registries, it would allow us as a country to generate even more significant revenue. And therefore, by modernizing our legislation, that puts into full focus opportunities for Barbados to do business as we have done in the international business sector. This now plants us firmly within the maritime sector for Barbados to be a place to do business with and to open up new and greater opportunities. Of course, ferries above 150 gross tons will also be able to register under the new merchant shipping bill, again, creating further inroads for the development of the ferry industry in Barbados and, of course, abroad. And we know that there are ferries that operate all over the world, and there are opportunities for us, for them to be registered under the new merchant shipping bill. Of continuing Part 7 of the bill, in addition to providing for ordinary vessel registration, it provides for bareboat charter registration. In a bareboat charter arrangement, the ship owner transfers to the charterer all of the operational and market risks associated with the vessel. Of course, I would have discussed this and I would have dealt with this when we introduced the other pieces of legislation early this year. We spoke to this extensively in terms of the chartering and bareboat charters and the ownership that is required by international law. And because it's a vessel that can be operated only under one flag at any given time, again, it promotes opportunities for Barbados's maritime sector for us to generate even more revenue under that section. Part 7 at Clause 93 of the bill indicates that the program, that is the Barbados's International Ship Registry Program for the overall management of shipping, should guide the work of Barbados's International Ships Registry and related activities, and that we should also support the undertaking of actions to continuously give effect to this act and its statutory instrument and serve as a guiding framework for the continuous improvement and development of Barbados's merchant shipping sector. When we continue at clauses 172 to 188 of the bill, it establishes, of course, an overarching international ships registry program. Also, very importantly, a yacht registry sub-program, which is clause 172 section 2, which guides the work of Barbados's yacht registry and yacht registry related activities. Clauses 189 to 194 of the bill establishes a cruise ship registry sub-program within the overarching Barbados International Ships Registry Program. Clause 190 is specific in the sense that it sets out and it tells us that in order to guide the work of Barbados Cruise Ship Registry, the cruise ship registry related activities are therefore embodied within this section. It talks about the ability of the program to create and maintain an enabling environment for the continued advancement of Barbados's cruise industry. It talks about promoting strategies that will attract cruise ships to and to retain cruise ships under the Barbados flag and to support capacity building, training, and employment opportunities in the cruise sector. Now, we all know that there are some countries, and particularly cruise ship companies, I should correct myself, who will oftentimes flag a ship. There are some cruise ships, when we go on them, you will see the name of a country. And you would ask yourself, well, why is it that that cruise line operating, for example, in Miami, would have the name of a Caribbean country on the cruise ship? It is for this reason that they have the right to register. And therefore, with us modernizing our legislation, we stand to benefit from the opportunities afforded to other countries for us to have a cruise ship registry firmly established in Barbados. And that is why I took the time to settle all the conventions, why the bill has in excess of 1,000 pages, because these matters are critical. And were they dealt with before, Barbados perhaps would have had a number of cruise ships registered under its name, plying the ocean. But of course, this legislation will give us the important steps. It also, as I indicated, makes and provides an opportunity for yachts as well to be registered here. You will know, Madam Deputy Speaker, that when we sometimes go on YouTube or we are traveling and we have an opportunity maybe to look across any area of a port, that sometimes you see some luxurious yachts, and oftentimes you hear about these billion-dollar yachts or a yacht for $500 and $600 million. And obviously sometimes bearing the name of another state. It is important that we recognize that in Barbados, and there are a number of persons out there who support Barbados, who like Barbados, and certainly will want to register their yachts and our cruise ships. And therefore, this gives us an opportunity for even not only more revenue, but other economic opportunities, and certainly opportunities for employment as well. One very interesting component of the merchant shipping suite has to do with gender mainstreaming in shipping. At clauses 195 to 216, the bill details the framework to advance at the national level the international maritime gender policy. The gender policy is that states should undertake the necessary measures to bring about gender balance in the maritime industry. And that is contained at clauses 195 to 216. General matters in respect of ships, especially those carrying the Barbados flag, clauses 217 to 226 of the bill. It addresses general matters in respect of the Barbados ships in relation to the national colors and national flag, and also it requires that those foreign ships who carry the Barbados flag do so in a manner that is consistent with the decorum and the national character of Barbados by ships in the port and parcels, obviously, of the areas of marine security and safety. The clauses 227 to 243, the bill makes provision for the registration and management of autonomous vessels and remote ship operations. The merchant shipping bill is unique in this sense, in that it provides the regulatory framework for conventionally manned merchant vessels and remotely operated or fully autonomous vessels. As you can detect, Madam Deputy Speaker, we are looking to the future. You know, the world is changing, and therefore, as we modernize our legislation, it is important for us to ensure that we move with the times. And clauses 227 to 243 would help us in terms of not only maintaining our advancement within this sector, but also ensuring that we comply with the IMO conventions. Within the IMO, there's the merchant shipping classifications. In fact, there are 4 degrees of autonomous ships. Degree 1, I'm told, is the ship with an automated processes and decision support. Seafarers are on board to operate and control the ship. There's degree 2, where you have remotely controlled ship with seafarers on board. The ship is controlled and operated from another location, but seafarers are on board. The degree 3, remotely controlled ship without seafarers on board, and the ship is controlled and operated from another location. So you can see how far we're going into the future. And degree 4 is that you have the fully autonomous ship. Operating system of the ship is able to make decisions and determine actions by itself. Of course, the latter is still within the IMO framework emerging, and therefore there will be changes to that particular degree, degree 4, as we continue with the progress. But the important thing is that this now allows Barbados not only to modernize its legislation, but it encourages us to foster not only regional and international collaboration from this jurisdiction, but it also provides for the establishment of a National Maritime Vessels Remote Operations Center. In respect of clauses 44 to 264, ship mortgages. The bill deals with ship mortgages affairs and implements the IMO Convention on Maritime Liens and Mortgages. It is crucial to note that a ship owner transfers a security interest in the ship to a lender as collateral for a mortgage loan in a ship. And a ship mortgage is legally composed of three components, similar to other forms of mortgages, of course. You have the mortgage loan, you have the mortgage document, and you have the rights arising from the mortgage deed granted to the moneylender. Merchant shipping laws are the legal foundations for ship mortgages in many shipping nations, and is tied to vessel registration. And in maritime law, I'm told that only registered ships are eligible for statutory legal mortgages. And this bill provides for registration of vessels under construction so that a legal mortgage can be obtained in respect of a vessel. So we are forward thinking in the sense that we're not only thinking about when the vessel is constructed, but before it is constructed, you have an opportunity, if you wish, to engage in ship finance. You can do so from this location because you will have the necessary IMO credentials written into the legislation to help support and advance the areas of finance within shipping. Of course, ship mortgages enable, as we know, the building and purchasing of other financial related ventures in respect of ships and their undertakings. And it is important that within the regime of the merchant shipping bill that we decided it was necessary to level the playing field between the mortgages, obviously those who borrow money, and of course certainly the lenders. International maritime safety is also well embedded within that particular section. Vessel registration comes from the responsibility of the country of registration to ensure the vessels registered under its flag state complies, of course, with all of the required international maritime related regulations. The economic safeguards in shipping, those are found at clauses 295 to 296 of the bill, which implements the International Convention on Tonnage Measurement of Ships. That is why I took the time as we introduced the bill to settle a lot of the conventions that were either absent and those that were necessary for the future build-out of the economic development of the maritime sector. Not only did we look at the maritime safety, but we also look at the economic safety net to ships based on a universal tonnage measure. Of course, when you have tonnage measurement, you can also, when you're registering the ship, benefit from additional revenue. And therefore, it is important that the ship tonnage be calculated in accordance with the single international system for determining the ship's tonnage, which is enshrined in the Tonnage Convention, which is obviously associated with the bill. The other maritime safety standards are to be found at clauses 297 to 459 of the bill. It is expansive because obviously the International Maritime Organization places a significant premium on safety, not only with respect to ship safety, but of course to the safety of all those on board a ship. And of course, with the technology that we are using on board, technology being employed on ships, it is necessary that safety mechanisms be put in place to ensure that we minimize not only injury to those on board, but also to the vessels, because you could well imagine that if you don't pay particular attention to safety and the ship should go underground, the potential for oil spills and everything else would cause significant damage to our environment. So the bill indicated at clauses 297 to 459 all of the required international maritime safety regime in respect of ships. It talks about the maritime meteorological services. It talks about safe container shipping. It talks about the maritime search and rescue operations, preventing collisions at sea, safety of life at sea, the ship load capacity, and all of the associated areas of safety. The bill, clause 314, within that section of maritime safety, also speaks to the digital twin by Barbados Port Inc. A digital twin is a digital replica of a vessel, port, or other physical asset used in the maritime industry, including its related processes, systems, and information. And digital twinning is an acknowledged opportunity for the maritime sector improvement. And there's no doubt that the digital twin is the future of the maritime sector as well. Madam Deputy Speaker, and I know I'm taking some time to go through the bill, but I also want to make the point that in respect of safety, the bill pretty much supports the safety regime followed by the International Maritime Organization. There's also a number of subsidiary instruments. Those are obviously contained in the bill. And in respect of the International Maritime Environmental Protection Standards, of course, this is very important because we know that ships could, if there's an accident, there could be pollution. Depends if it's a regular cargo ship or it's a oil tanker ferrying oil or diesel or whatever that is necessary, could create, especially for a country like Barbados, significant challenges, considering that we depend largely on the tourism sector. So clauses 460 to 649 of the bill addresses the environmental considerations in shipping. International maritime regulatory framework for preventing, reducing, and controlling pollution of the marine environment from various forms of ship-generated pollution are comprehensively addressed within these parts. Of course, the bill is supported by the following subsidiary instruments: the Merchant Shipping Oil Pollution Prevention Regulations, the Merchant Shipping Chemical Pollution, the Merchant Shipping Sewage and Garbage Pollution Prevention Regulations, the Merchant Shipping Anti-Fouling Systems, and a number of other, within that section, a number of other statutory instruments to ensure we maintain, obviously, an environment that is protective of our coastal lands. The International Maritime Security Standards, those are detailed at clauses 650 to 947 of the bill, and again, it addresses all of the safety considerations in shipping, maritime security and safety again. Those are very detailed within the bill. The maritime security regime is also supported by the instruments relating to merchant shipping, ship and port facility security, and the maritime security specific inspection requirements comprising the merchant shipping regulations on flag, port, and coastal state control. Of course, following through from that, we also have clauses 948 to 1033, a section which deals with shipwrecks. Of course, it deals with wreck removal and marine salvage. It is important, as I've indicated, and when we piloted other bills leading up to this bill, I spoke at length about the importance, of course, of wrecks and certainly in accordance with the wreck discoveries and sunken military craft regulation of the IMO. We are certainly in alignment in this bill with the IMO standards regarding wreck removal and marine salvage. Of course, we have to ensure that from time to time there is a procedure for the removal of shipwrecks, because if we don't have the procedures in place, we could adversely affect the safety of lives, certainly of goods and property at sea, and in particular, the marine environment. In respect of shipping governance, clauses 1034 to 1052 of the bill presents the governance framework to ensure continued and effective regulation of shipping activities within the ambit of the flag, port, or coastal state control. This part is further supported by the merchant shipping flag state control regulations, the merchant shipping port state control regulations, and the merchant shipping coastal state regulations. A key feature of this shipping governance framework is the creation of a Barbados IMO compliance monitoring program, the work of which should be implemented by a national maritime performance audit committee. And that committee will be largely an interagency committee that will essentially perform internal audits on Barbados in relation to its international maritime obligations and make relevant corrections to shortcomings identified. Of course, the operationalization of the National Maritime Performance Audit Committee will keep Barbados abreast of its international maritime obligations and certainly position Barbados to continually improve on its performance under the external international maritime audits conducted by the IMO. So in other words, what we are saying, that we are not going to wait for all of these regulations to be advanced by the IMO, and then we find ourselves wanting or playing catch-up. What we're effectively doing is putting the frameworks into law to ensure that, thanks to the wonderful officers that we have within the ministry responsible for guiding this policy, an opportunity to keep Barbados abreast and to maintain compliance with all of the IMO standards. Ship inspections and enforcement that is covered clauses 1053 to 1070. Of course, the bill outlines the procedures in respect of ship inspections and enforcement, and of course, the exercise of powers by the maritime authorities in relation to ships. Of course, again, when we brought other pieces of legislation relating to the maritime sector, those I took the opportunity and I went through them very clearly. There was extensive discourse with respect to the enforcement and obligations included Coast Guard and other entities, and therefore the sections, clauses 1053 to 1070 of the bill would protect Barbados in terms of its border and customs control procedure. Clauses 1071 to 1078 of the bill outlines procedures in relation to maritime accidents and certainly incident investigation and inquiries. It is further supported by the maritime shipping, maritime accidents and investigation regulations, and activities conducted within Section 32 will be executed in accordance with the Code of the International Standards and Recommended Practices for a Safety Investigation into a Marine Casualty or a Marine Incident, which is incorporated within the bill. Shipbuilding, recycling, and ship repair. Of course, this is a very exciting and interesting area. It is found at clauses 1079 to 1204 of the bill, which details a comprehensive framework for shipbuilding, ship repair, and ship recycling. Shipbuilding and ship recycling under the repair regime is separated into 5 divisions at part 33, and at each of these sections addressing specific aspects of shipbuilding, repair, and obviously the recycling. Of course, by incorporating this section into the bill, it allows Barbados now to benefit substantially from investments in dry docks. Of course, if you want to have a dry dock in Barbados, you will now have an opportunity to do so because the person or entity looking to invest in a dry dock in Barbados can look and say, Barbados has a modern legislative agenda which sets out very clearly and very comprehensively the framework for shipbuilding to be done in Barbados. And if we were fortunate to have an opportunity for a dry dock in Barbados, for example, That would create numerous opportunities. It would create numerous economic opportunities, numerous financial opportunities. Certainly, there will be jobs associated with it in terms of boat building, and of course, there'll be training. And it will allow a lot of our young people who are currently at the Samuel Jackman Institute of Technology and those who are working within BIMAP, advancing their careers and training within the maritime sector. It would allow them and others to build out a sector which we believe should be done in Barbados. When I look across the region, I believe in terms of a dry dock for larger vessels, you find, for example, I believe is in the Nassau, in the Bahamas, where they have a dry dock, and they have done a lot of work there in terms of building out capacity and thereby contributing not only to economic activity, but like I said, creating even more jobs. So the bill is forward thinking in its approach by seeking to ensure that we have a very comprehensive framework for shipbuilding, ship repair, and ship recycling. Obviously, Madam Deputy Speaker, the bill, like most bills, would have a miscellaneous clause. These clauses are found at 1,205 to 1,488. It is separated into 14 divisions, which outline the miscellaneous matters in respect of the merchant shipping bill. The miscellaneous matters would range, Madam Deputy Speaker, from offenses, maritime jurisdictional matters regarding ships, ship detentions, procedures to be followed in relation to births and deaths on ships, matters pertaining to maritime documentation, marine notices, vessel arrests, judicial sale of ships, general average, commercial shipping contracts and practices, other maritime compliance requirements, ministerial powers relating to the making of regulations, and the amendment of schedules to the legislation. I don't think I have to go through those in detail because I think they're adequately set out, and members obviously would have had an opportunity to review the bill ahead of the debate. In terms of the future and current actions of the ministry, of course, the bill sets out a national maritime administrative framework. The recently established Barbados Maritime Transport Administration within my ministry, which is responsible for maritime transport affairs, of course, is in the process of being built out. We are working with the Ministry of the Public Service to outfit the Barbados Maritime Transport Administration with the requisite human resources it needs to effectively address the administrative-related deficiencies identified in the 2018 IMO audit. We will continue, certainly, to upskill. We will continue to ensure that our officers within the ministry benefit from the best possible training, that they attend regular IMO workshops and seminars to ensure that they maintain their knowledge in terms of the currency of affairs associated within the maritime sector. Of course, we are also within the ministry engaged with those tertiary level institutions, providing training, as I indicated, within the Samuel Jackman Institute of Technology, as well as the BIMAP. Those are responsible. So we are on the road to building out and upskilling within the ministry. And therefore, it is important that we continue to facilitate this process within the ministry. The bill covers a wide range of activities, but I think it is safe to say, if we had to look at the benefits of the merchant shipping bill to Barbados, I've spoken about some of those initiatives, but I think it is important for us to look at the suite of laws and what it promises. And for us in Barbados, those are immeasurable benefits for Barbados, including the advancement of Barbados's mercantile marine sector in the best matter to serve the national interests. Of course, we want to promote the growth in fleet, which is a direct result of the ship registration activities that I would have spoken to. We want to talk about the ease to meet ship registration requirements, which will attract various kinds of vessels to Barbados, the development of opportunities for ancillary industries to support the marine sector, and I listed some of those, included the issue of shipbuilding, ship repairs, and ship recycling services, certainly, and marine financial services. Tonnage revenues increase, of course, due to ship registration activities, ships of various sizes as measured in tonnage and associated registration fees and other vessel-related services according to the basis of the ship's tonnage. And that is another significant benefit. The ability to provide and financially benefit from IMO statutory certification services by virtue of domesticating IMO instruments into our national law, better and continued improved performance on future IMO audits, the improved reputation of Barbados as a shipping nation that is fully aligned in terms of its maritime regulatory framework with global maritime standards and best practices, and the legal basis for administering and implementing the international maritime laws on marine safety, security, marine pollution from ships, and as a result, giving force into law of the international maritime instruments. Of course, it will level the playing field for Barbados to competitively engage in international seaborne trade and commerce, training and employment opportunities in the seagoing and shore-based maritime sector, promotion of public-private partnerships in merchant shipping sector, a platform for increased participation by the private sector shipping organizations in merchant shipping sector development, and harnessing of diverse investment opportunities in Barbados's merchant marine sector from cargo, cruise, yacht, ferrying, and other related sectors with shipping support. And of course, the continual bringing of minds together to pool in various approaches to the merchant shipping sector development. And to this end, Clause 1473 of the bill provides for an individual or group representing the merchant sector to propose strategies and initiatives to the administration that will benefit Barbados's merchant shipping sector. And that was also explained in relation to a similar clause within the Shipping Domestic Vessels Act that was proclaimed not so long ago. So that predominantly deals with the first section of the first bill. The second bill, which is what I referred to, the second bill, as noted, is the Merchant Shipping Liability and Compensation Bill. Again, shipping and shipping-related activities generally concern ship owners and ship operators, cargo owners, insurers, seaport authorities, and other maritime stakeholders. Of course, loss of life, injury, and environmental damage arising out of a maritime casualty will affect maritime and non-maritime stakeholders and has significant far-reaching effects. It is for this reason that the International Maritime Organization has developed the Liability and Compensation Conventions. Of course, the Liability and Compensation Convention of the IMO, those conventions we have incorporated into the Merchant Shipping Liability and Compensation Bill. Of course, the IMO liability and compensation instruments strike a balance to ensure, on one hand, a successful claim can be adequately compensated. Claimant can be adequately compensated for any loss or injury or damage suffered in respect of a ship, and on the other hand, to ensure that ship owners can limit their liability to an amount which is already insurable at a reasonable premium. So we have incorporated and given life to the IMO instruments, the International Convention on Civil Liability for Oil Pollution Damage 1969 is incorporated within the Liability and Compensation Bill. The 1992 Protocol, as amended to the International Convention on the Establishment of an International Fund for Compensation for Oil Pollution Damage, the Convention relating to civil liability in the field of maritime carriage of nuclear material 1971 as amended, the International Convention on Liability and Compensation for Damage in connection with the carriage of hazardous and noxious substances by sea, as amended by its 2010 protocol to the HNS Convention, the Convention on the Limitation of Liability for Maritime Claims as amended by the 1996 protocol, the Athens Convention relating to the carriage of passengers and their luggage by sea as amended by the 2002 protocol, and the International Convention on Civil Liability for Bunker Oil Pollution Damage 2001 as amended. Of course, it sounds like a mouthpiece, but it's important if we want to maintain a jurisdiction that has a modern maritime infrastructure, a jurisdiction that is fully compliant with IMO regulations. It is important that we adopt those matters. Of course, we have situations where we will have to manage in accordance with the legislation, and therefore it is necessary that within the purview of the law, that marine insurance, which is clearly going to be an essential component of international liability framework, that marine insurance is obviously in a wider sector, and that it not only operates beyond the confines of liability and compensation regimes for ships, but will be seen under the coming, that will be noted, I should say, within the coming Marine Insurance Industry Act. The fishing industry and the IMO, and I think it is important that we discuss this. Barbados' fishing industry will be afforded by virtue of regulations subsidiary to the Merchant Shipping Liability Compensation Bill, the opportunity to benefit from the IMO Maritime Liability and Compensation System. It is for this reason that the Food and Agriculture Organization and the International Maritime Organization are desirous of protecting fisherfolk, and in this regard, enable fishing vessels to benefit from IMO liability and compensation systems. Of course, the IMO maritime liability regime, insurance or other forms of financial security is compulsory for ship owners, and the IMO has made insurance or other forms of financial security compulsory for fear that without doing it, claimants may not be able to claim compensation due to them as a result of a maritime accident. We are certainly moving full speed ahead to ensure that the work with the FAO and the IMO and all of the necessary regulations that will evolve from that, of course, for the fishing sector, that we move to ensure that owners of fishing vessels and have at least third-party insurance in place to cover the vast majority of third-party claims, obviously subject to the limitations of the IMO 1976 Convention on Limitation of Liability. Of course, there is a number of other related matters concerning the bill. Of course, the coming merchant shipping limitation of liability relating to war and terrorism regulations. Again, this is in accordance with the Athens Convention, and therefore the carriage of passengers and luggage at sea is amended. We will bring that into force as well so that we'll be protected. We are also drafting the direct draft instructions to direct the preparation of the merchant shipping limitation of liability relating to war and terrorism claims have been crafted, and once all of the required processes in relation to the said regulations have been satisfied, these regulations will serve as an instrument to the 2006 reservation to the Athens Marine Convention relating to war and terrorism, and the said merchant shipping limitation of liability relating to wars and terrorism claims regulations will be subsidiary to the eventual Shipping Liability and Compensation Act. In other words, once we've completed that work, then we will satisfy the regulations within the bill. I think obviously, I'm trying to go through it as quickly as I can, but the issues relating to a marine incident Obviously, within the liability and compensation bill, it will deal adequate with personal injury and death, loss of or damage to the vessel, loss of or damage to cargo, the environmental damage, economic losses, costs associated with preventive measures, and of course, expenditure related to the cleanup costs. And this is very much an issue that we have to monitor, especially considering, like I said earlier, Barbados' economic stability is largely structured and earnings structured around, in part, tourism revenues. The third bill, featuring the Merchant Shipping Maritime Marriage Bill, this is a not too difficult one in the sense that, of course, we know that vessels, including cruise ships and yachts, have throughout time facilitated marriages by providing onboard space to accommodate persons desirous of marrying at sea. Of course, there's the International Convention to which Barbados is a party regarding places various obligations on the flag state. There are also the social aspects of shipping in respect of seafarers regulated, and of course, the common seafarers suite of laws in alignment with the Law of the Sea Convention, the International Convention on Standards of Training, Certification, and Watchkeeping for Seafarers, and Maritime Labor Conventions will also be coming very short, if not certainly this year. In the new year, 2025, we will have the Merchant Seafarers Suite coming to this chamber. But as it relates to the Maritime Shipping Maritime Marriage Bill, it provides a regulatory framework for the conduct and the formalities of marriages on board ships, on board Barbados ships, irrespective of where those ships may be operating, the licensing of ship captains to function as marriage officers and married persons on board Barbados ships, the recognition of marriages on board ships as having been taken place in Barbados, and a regulatory framework to support obtaining a legally recognized marriage in the maritime context. Of course, we all know that a ship captain doesn't generally have the right to officiate a wedding, but in order to do so, the person would have to be legally authorized to do so. And therefore, we're moving with great haste to ensure that this bill, once it passes this chamber and the other place, would allow for the facilitation of marriages on Barbados flag ships. Of course, the existing Marriage Act 218A regulates land-based marriages, and that obviously the contents with respect to this bill, it is consistent with the existing Marriage Act, so that is protected, so there's no changes in respect of the marriage bill, Cap 218A, and this and what we have included within the this proposed bill. Of course, the bill will enable official wedding ceremonies to take place far out at sea, including in waters beyond Barbados' jurisdiction and on ships docked in ports. Of course, it would also allow for those who are in the business, for example, of cruise ships and who wish to get married on cruise ships, that they can do so even on a Barbados flag ship. In conclusion, obviously, once we confirm, as we've done, the United Nations Convention on Law of the Seas, to which Barbados is a party and a flag state with social responsibilities such as marriages in relation to flying the Barbados flag, the Merchant Shipping Maritime Marriage Bill will provide a regulatory framework, like I said, for the conduct and formalities of marriages on board ships, irrespective of where those ships may be operating, the licensing of a ship captain to function as a marriage officer and to marry a person on board a Barbados ship, the recognition of marriages on board Barbados ships of having taken place in Barbados, and of course the regulation and the regulatory framework to support obtaining a legally recognized marriage in the maritime context. So the bill is far-reaching. It follows, as I indicated, the marriage bill, so there's no issue with respect to that matter. In respect of the fourth bill, the Merchant Shipping Liner Conferences Bill, the UN Convention on a Code of Conduct for liner conferences broke new ground in the international shipping legislation to the extent that it deliberately seeks to effectively regulate an important sector of international shipping, namely the liner conference sector, which has been self-regulating ever since the first liner conference was held, I believe it was the Calcutta Conference back in 1875. Of course, the adoption of the convention sets the seal on several years of efforts, particularly on the part of developing countries, to bring about a change in operation and practices of liner conferences that would promote an equitable balance of interest between liner operators and shippers on the one hand, and between the old-timers and newcomers to the liner shipping on the other hand. Of course, the importance of a liner, the liner conference system also requires, as to a shipping conference system, is an agreement with the shipping sector in relation to ocean liners. Generally, the agreement is between two or more shipping companies to provide scheduled cargo and or passenger services on a particular trade route under the uniform rates and common terms. The expression liner conference designates a group of maritime carriers providing international liner services for the transport of cargo on a particular route or routes within the specified geographical limits, which operates pursuant to an agreement setting out uniform or common freight rates. Of course, a freight rate must be obtained so that all expenses are covered, with a remainder sufficient for the returns on investment. In analysis of economic merit of shipping project, this rate is often referred to as the required freight rate. The benefits of the liner conference system to Barbados shipping sector would include stability of freight rate services and schedule for shippers, no discrimination between shippers served by a conference. A shipper is ensured that its competitors cannot gain lower rates by shopping around. The regular shipping service creates confidence for both ship owners and shippers that business is secure. Conferences provide broader geographical coverage than individual lines, as well as a variety of ships with flexibility. The elimination of competition between members of the conference lead to increased partnerships and collaboration in the interest of continued and sustainable seaborne trade and commerce, and weaker lines, which may be eliminated in free competition regime, survive under the haven of the liner conferences. Of course, the liner conferences play a significant role in global trade because it has the ability to lower transport costs. Lower costs of shipping makes transport of goods overseas easier. Prices of goods may be reduced, and there is increased product variety and better consumer choices, and obviously contributes to the enhanced standard of living. And therefore, the Merchant Shipping Liner Bill, once enacted, will repeal the Liner Conferences Act Cap 290. The existing act, though it gives force to the law of the United Nations Convention on a Code of Conduct for Liner Conferences, does not effectively implement the code as per UNCTAD guidelines toward the application of the Convention on a Code of Conduct for the Liner Conferences. The fifth and final bill, Madam Deputy Speaker, is the Merchant Shipping Multimodal Transport Bill. The international regulatory framework for seaborne trade and commerce is embedded in the international standards. The Committee Maritime International, the Baltic International Maritime Council, the United Nations Conference for Trade and Development, and also the United Nations Commission for International Trade Law. The work of these international organizations is commercial in focus, and they play a pivotal role in driving maritime commerce and trade. This is unlike the International Maritime Organization, whose work is not commercial, and obviously the IMO has expressly stated that its role is to create a level playing field so that ship operators cannot address their financial issues by simply cutting corners and compromising on safety, security, and environmental performance. The bill is concerned mainly with maritime commercial activities, specifically the carriage of goods by sea, and the bill operates in the area of maritime law known as law of carriage of goods by sea, and that, that law is generally referred to as a dry shipping law because it mainly focuses on the legal implications of the agreements for the transport of cargo by sea and for the chartering of vessels. According to the interpretation section of the bill, multimodal transport means the transport of goods under a single contract but performed with more than one mode of transport, one of which includes transport by sea. This may include air and land as part of the transport process. The importance of the multimodal sector, another key advantage of the multimodal transport is its ability to leverage the strengths of different modes of transport. For example, water transport with its large carrying capacity is ideal for bulk shipments, and air transport provides high-speed connections for time-sensitive goods or perishable items. Of course, multimodal transport also helps us to alleviate congestion on specific modes of transport by diverting some of the traffic from heavily congested routes. Multimodal transport reduces the strain on the infrastructure and improves overall traffic flow. The bill is not long in the sense that it sets out what the comprehensive regulatory regime for the carriage of goods involving various modes, like I said, including sea and other modes of transportation. Its aim, obviously, is secure uniformity by way of predictable content in the contracts of the carriage, and obviously be guided by the IMO conventions and regulations. And for that reason, we felt it necessary that we had to enshrine that within the suite of shipping laws. Madam Deputy Speaker, in conclusion, I think it's fair to say that the 5 bills and the 22 regulations comprising the merchant shipping suite of laws provide a legislative framework that is internationally recognized, reflective of international best practices across the spectrum of activities in the merchant shipping sector. The suite of laws promote compliance with international maritime standards and requirements, yet providing a platform for development and growth in shore-based and ocean-based arenas in terms of shipping. Before I conclude, let me also thank the Office of the Chief Parliamentary Counsel, CPC, for its coordination, oversight, and the assiduous efforts in ensuring the timely completion of the merchant shipping suite of laws comprising the 5 bills, as I indicated, in view of the pending IMO audit. Let me also thank Mr. Paul Slimeberg-Rogers. I know, Madam Deputy Speaker, I didn't ask your permission to call the names, but I believe it's important enough, and for that I apologize. And with your permission, I can go ahead. The legislative and drafting specialist who assisted the Chief Parliamentary Counsel in converting the drafting instructions for the 5 merchant shipping bills and associated 22 regulations into legislation. Let me also thank the London-based team of the Barbados Maritime Ships Registry, who administers and executes the flag state control responsibilities in respect of Barbados's registered international vessels registered on the International Ships Register and manages the International Ships Registry on behalf of the Government of Barbados. Let me also thank Dr. Nigel Taylor, Maris Chairman, for his contributions from the draft and instruction stage through to the bill, ensuring that notwithstanding the maritime aspects of marriage at sea, Barbados's marital customs, practices, and procedures were effectively woven into the new maritime marriage framework. Let me also thank the port management, some of those who are present with us, the CEO, David John Marie, Captain Carol Branch, and of course, Romel Edwards for their contribution from the port's perspective. Let me also recognize, and they're here with us in the chamber as well, Ms. Nigel King, who is the Director of Maritime Affairs Acting, and Dion Gibbs-Nichols, who's the Chief Technical Officer Acting within the Ministry, They're both with us today, the ladies. They have done considerable work in order for us to advance these bills. I must tell you that I didn't know much about shipping at all. When I went to the ministry, the Honourable member for St. Michael's South told me that I have a very fine team up there, and he included Ms. Nigel King, the director, and Ms. Leon Gibbs-Nichols. So he told me that I was in safe hands, and I must tell you that indeed I am in safe hands with the ladies who've prepared it. I really have to congratulate them for the efforts and all the work coordinating with CPC regarding the other pieces of legislation that we've brought to this Parliament. We are not finished yet. We have 2 additional pieces of legislation which we intend to bring to the Parliament this year, the Maritime Heritage and certainly the Seaport Bill. But finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, I think that the fact that we've been able to accomplish as many laws this year within this chamber, and certainly the bills laid today and debated, I think is a wonderful opportunity that this is now going to present a wonderful opportunity for Barbados, not only to make Barbados more attractive, but also to create other opportunities in finance and shipbuilding, and also to build additional employment, and also, Madam Deputy Speaker, to ensure that we implement a framework that is attractive, one that we can advance, one that we are proud of, and certainly correcting all of the legislative deficits that were left with us. And I must say that once we continue to build out this sector, and I have every confidence when it comes to the audit that Barbados will do well, but every confidence that with these new pieces of legislation and pending legislation to come, that the framework for Barbados in terms of positioning itself as a major player within the Caribbean and on the international scene will give us the benefits that we deserve within this sector. And Madam Deputy Speaker, with those few remarks, I would like to ask that order number 11, the Merchant Shipping Bill and associated references, be read a second time.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. On the last occasion I spoke in this place, I would have lamented the absence of several of my parliamentary colleagues